Thanks everybody. So yeah, Hereafter is our virtual reality journey into the afterlife, which myself, Ferran and Marcus have made. So I'm Niall, the creative producer and writer on the project. And we just want to talk a bit about this and the sort of flavour of VR projects that we've been working on in recent times. We're tending to frame those as like VR that kind of makes you look inward, or if we're feeling a bit flowery, we say it's transcendent VR. So that set us on this track of exploring VR that basically takes you into the inner world. And I think triggered for us this thought that people talk about virtual reality is often offering 4 or 5 really key things. So those are a sense of scale, you can look up and see things in a way that you never can on a flat screen. A sense of embodiment, you have a form and you can move that body and interact with the world through that embodiment. A sense of place, so if it's say 360 film, you can really experience the location. But we always want to add something to that list, which is the idea that VR creates a sense of introspection or inward looking. Because when you put a headset on, it's a really private experience. You're in this little world. It's very immediate, like whatever happens in there, it's kind of right in your face, it's loud, it's all around you. You tend to be a captive audience when you go in VR, so once you put a headset on, it's like you tend to stay in there, certainly for longer than if you just walk up to a screen. If you don't like it, you just walk away, whereas once you're in VR, you tend to stay. And people, by even putting a headset on, are often like, seem like more open to like having their mind blown and like having some strange experience. So all of that sort of combines, I think, to make VR a really great space to ask interesting questions that are about topics that can be a bit uncomfortable, or that can be sort of about inner life. And in the modern world, those are sort of areas that we don't tend to go that much. I think we live in quite a sort of rationalistic and materialistic society, and it doesn't encourage sort of depth of sort of going into the depths. We often live at quite a superficial level and are not encouraged to like sit with what's inside. So I think by creating VR that confronts people with that stuff, our hope is that we can sort of like knock a wall down, and that just opens up a bit of a new area for them to consider and to explore. So Hereafter feels like the perfect kind of next step in that for us, because it's looking at death, which is a bit of a big one. And so the premise is that it's a VR journey into the afterlife. So we interviewed 4 people and created a 10-minute audio documentary asking people what they hope happens when they die, what they fear happens when they die, and what they think really will happen when they die. And the user gets into this canoe that you probably can't see, but they get into a canoe, put the VR headset on, and travel down this virtual river, hearing these voices speaking about visions of what happens when we die. And it's been a really interesting experience. We had probably 2.5 weeks to work on it, and we're all doing jobs alongside it. So Fran reckons we built it in 3 days, maybe 5 days, but it's been really fast turnaround. And so that has made it quite intense. Like, I've been going around London speaking to people about death, which has been kind of full on, but very interesting. And that's translated into this documentary audio aspect of this that we feel strong. And one of the challenges in working in that tight time frame was that the audio and visuals had to be done simultaneously, so we didn't really have time to create the documentary and then decide what the world would look like and what would be in it. So we had to really follow our instincts about how to make it look and you know, sort of what to draw on for it to feel relevant, even though we didn't know what people would say. So there's some sort of mythic touchstones like the river Styx and all the three rivers in the Greek underworld. But also, we just found this quite interesting process where we ended up really following our instincts. It's a bit of a like pastiche of all these different images and ideas about the afterlife, and we combine them in this sort of instinctive collage on this river. And I feel through all of that is this kind of meeting point of like the digital. We've gone with like a very digital aesthetic, with a lot of like exposed geometries. The physical, because we have this wooden boat that's got this like presence in the room, so the two meet there through the projections as well. And then just the mythic, you know, that's kind of littered throughout all of it. There's a sense of like symbolism and mythic imagery through all of it. So I think that sets the scene, and that's the overall tone. But I'll maybe hand over to Marcus now to talk about the more specifics on the visuals and how he made it brand awesome.
Hello guys, my name is Marcos. I am developer and VFX artist in HEREAFTER. So when we were coming up with the storytelling devices, we picked VR as it's a very immersive experience, and how Noah said before, it's a very private experience. So VFX inside of VR allow us to tell a story very visually. HEREAFTER is a very narrative-heavy experience. So we had to come up with different ways of including VFX inside the experience without overshadowing what was being said inside of the story. So in order to tie in the special effects to what the people inside were saying, we drew inspirations for what inspired us to do the application to begin with, which was different beliefs around death. With this, we had some research to do, and we came up with different sections and objects to kind of draw from. We used a lot of astral objects, star constellations, and sacred geometry as inspiration, and that's what we included in the final build for it. So we thought that these would really relay in the emotion of what these people were explaining, and we could really reinforce what they were speaking about. We used a very bright color scheme, very bright blues and whites. We wanted to have this glowing kind of feel to kind of resemble mystical soul-like beings. And this turned out pretty well because it could contrast a lot to the environment, so it really made the visual effects very punchy and very bright. And yeah, so without further ado, I'll show you a little bit about how we made it. So we start with a simple point, a dot, which we call a particle. This dot can be made into simple shapes, such as a circle, which allows us to have a base ground. Having shapes like this can make us create even bigger shapes using the same structure, such as this that we created, which is based on the sacred geometry. So this was our ethos. We had these kind of basic building blocks that were built on top of to create something that resembled sacred geometry. Now, when it gets interesting is when you get these flat 2D shapes and add a little bit of code behind it. So if you see this very circular image, very 2D, with a simple bit of code, we can take these 2D shapes, and just by adding a spin, it creates a 3D element behind it, making these circles have a planetary feel, very interdimensional, a very simple yet effective way of being able to add more depth into the effects. Piggybacking off that, we carried on with the programming of the visuals and these particles, and we ended up creating something beautiful accidentally. These are our soul beings that are being integrated into the experience. completely randomly moving throughout the land, wandering through space. They add a really dynamic element and really help to set the mood inside the experience. They really add on to what we had usually, which are more static beings throughout the whole experience. So this really creates a more dynamic element throughout everything. And using that thoughts behind moving objects, we ended up having a classic shooting star that really kind of tied up the things together as soon as you're leaving the experience. So overall, visual effects was a really important part of all of this to kind of really reinforce what you're hearing and kind of really give weight to the people's experiences without taking away from their words. Now Fran will tell us a bit more about we went over the networking side, right? Awesome, thanks guys.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Frank Macia. I was one of the two developers for this project. Both me and Marcos were responsible for both coding and setting up the scene. And I was particularly responsible for developing the network aspect of the application, because like for all of the projects that we're doing in VR, we think it's quite important to not only focus on what goes inside of the headset, but also work on projections and also possible interactions that happen outside of VR, as that will really help with engaging the audience, because when someone enters the gallery and they just see a headset and only one person can do the experience one at a time, it's very limiting, it's very isolating. So we really want to have some projections that interact in real time with the application in VR, and that really helps to just add a new layer, more spatial, if you want to call it mixed reality, because it involves both digital and also physical aspects, if you want to consider the projection that. For Sigil, which is the project that Niall showed a bit of a video earlier that we worked on in the MNCBA residency in March and April, the setup that we had was 4 laptops connected to Oculus Quest headsets, so there were 4 players inside of a conceptual labyrinth, and there was also a 5th computer that was connected to a projector that was here on the ceiling and was projecting in real time what was going on in the labyrinth, where each of the 4 players were located, and it was updating in real time. And we think that would really help to engage everyone, as people were pointing at the dot that represented their friend and telling them, oh, go to the left, go to the right. It really helped to create a nice, kind of collaborative experience for everyone. And for this project, we really wanted to have a projection that had a cinematic kind of camera that would revolve around wherever the participant was on the boat at a given time. So basically the way that it works is that there are 2 clients. There is a laptop here that maybe you really cannot see, but that is the laptop that is running the main experience, so that's what's going on inside of the VR headset. And then there is this other client that is this laptop that is basically running this build that only has a projection camera. But basically, as soon as we set it up, it's going to look for the laptop that is running the main experience. It's going to attach, well, I don't know how in depth I should get in terms of technical Unity aspects, but basically anything in Unity is just a game object, any entity, any camera, player, object, whatever. They're all called game objects. And basically this client here, as soon as it starts, is going to look for the game object that represents the camera of the player, the boat itself. It's going to attach to it, and it's going to start following the position of this. And that way we can have a projection in real time. I'll make it full screen. I think it would be nicer like that. And that way we can have a projection that follows in real time what the person is going through in the headset. This is not only limited to a visual aspect. We didn't really have the time to add it to the project at this stage, but we have plans to do it going forward. But basically this means that because the other client that connects to this can be any other kind of device. It doesn't have to be a laptop, it could even be a tablet or another VR headset or whatever. But the thing is that you can interact with this application from the other devices as well. So the people that are outside of VR in other parts of the gallery will have a device that connects to this, and they do something that affects the VR experience in real time. Then we could consider that we're having a multiplayer mixed reality experience. And well, we also added some things on this one, like the ability to move the camera and stuff. just in case that people wanted to like get different different angles. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.